There is one country that people are leaving faster than any other in the world. It is predicted that this country's population will shrink by an unbelievable 22.5% between 2023 and 2050. And between 1989 and today, the population has already fallen from 9 million to 6.5 million, a decline of almost 30%. But why does everyone want to leave this country? I wanted answers, and that's why I traveled to the country that is bleeding demographically more and more.
Greetings from Bulgaria, one of the poorest and cheapest countries in Europe. An extremely high number of people are trying to leave this country, and today we are trying to find out why. Follow me. I have already been in the capital, Sofia, for about 4 to 5 hours now, and I can already tell you this capital is a city of contrasts. You have beautiful architectures in the center, great churches, very nice parks, friendly people. At the same time, there are also neighborhoods with lots of graffiti, shady characters, and so on. And that's exactly what I want to show you in this first part here in the capital. Later, we will also go to the most dangerous district of Sofia. Insane what Bulgarians are selling, guys. With Adolf Hitler on the packaging, on the matchboxes. Nazi helmets, postcards, lighters from the Waffen-SS, Totenkopf. Wow, that's crazy. Guys, I think this is probably even illegal to own in Germany. Do you speak English or Russian?
We can speak both Russian and English.
That's really interesting, because this is forbidden in Germany.
Screw you.
I just want to ask whether you are aware of this. In Germany, things like this do not exist. This is very historical. How much does one of these matchboxes cost?
One costs 10 euros, but if you take two, you get a discount. 17.50 for two. This one is German, this one is Soviet, and this one is Bulgarian.
Okay.
And where are you from?
Well, from Germany.
Why did you ask whether I speak Russian or English? I also speak German.
Ah, a polyglot.
Are you interested in my items? Please understand, I am not political. I am not interested in that. This is history. Forbidden, but history.
That was really strange, guys. 5 or 6 stalls, and every single one was selling these relics from the Nazi era. I asked ChatGPT how Bulgaria stood during the Nazi era. And indeed, which I did not really know before, Bulgaria was an ally of Germany in the Second World War. But the fact that all of this is still being sold today is, of course, a certain, well, I wouldn't call it a shock. Well, I have never seen anything like this before, so maybe it is a shock after all. One more side fact. Many older people learned Russian in school during the Soviet era. That means I think I will also get by reasonably well here with Russian. I should put it to the test. Excuse me. Do you speak English?
Yes, please.
I have one question, because I studied 5 years ago in Russia, and I want to ask to the elderly, the little beer older people in Bulgaria also speak Russian or English?
Probably the older people.
Ah, so you, for example, could you speak Russian language?
I can.
Ah, okay, perfect. So sometimes, when someone does not know English, it could be useful to switch to Russian, yeah?
Yes, with older people. Younger people do not study in the school Russian.
I see. Have a nice day.
You too! There you have it. I would probably get by reasonably well with Russian here too, at least with the babushkas and dadushkas. One thing I noticed in Bulgaria, which is not the case in other Eastern Bloc countries, is that there is graffiti everywhere here. The entire city is basically plastered with graffiti. Not a problem in itself, but it is definitely a contrast compared to the former Soviet republics. Only in Romania have I seen this as well, with so much graffiti. Here you can see graffiti of the hammer and sickle. Speaking of hammer and sickle, another small side fact, Bulgaria was often referred to as the unofficial 16th Soviet Republic. Because no country outside the Soviet Union was as close to the Soviet Union as Bulgaria, and that was, of course, another reason to explore this country.
Bulgaria's communist past is truly unique. They were allies of the Soviets, but never part of the Soviet Union. Communist rule began directly after the Second World War, and the monarchy was abolished. The government introduced large-scale collectivization and aimed for rapid industrialization. But the early years were also marked by Stalinism, characterized by the murder of political opponents and censorship. Despite improvements in education, the healthcare system, and women's rights, the economy stagnated in the 1980s. This ultimately led to protests and then the fall of communist rule. The transition to a new and modern Bulgaria was difficult, and even today, Bulgaria still suffers from a weak economy and political instability. Nevertheless, at first glance, I perceived a young and dynamic Bulgaria.
The numbers do not lie. An extremely large number of people are leaving Bulgaria, especially very many young people. But that surprises me a lot because the city feels extremely young to me. I see people my age everywhere. But maybe that is a distorted picture here in the capital. Mainly young people live here, and the rest of the country is probably much older on average. In any case, a beautiful capital.
But this capital has its weaknesses. Later in the video, I will also encounter drug problems, shady and dangerous neighborhoods, and I will talk in more detail with my friend Hristo about why so many people leave Bulgaria. So definitely stay tuned.
Anyone who has been watching my videos for a while knows that I often rave about how clean Eastern countries are, whether it is Poland, Belarus, and so on. But I have to say that is not the case in Bulgaria at all. The center of Bulgaria is also fairly littered, so there are exceptions in the Eastern Bloc as well. Bulgaria seems to have some problems there. I saw similar issues in Bucharest, even in the city center. Those are basically the two countries, but anyway. Countries that were part of the Soviet Union are something different from countries that are simply located in the east. Now, apart from the trash here in the center, you have to say that the main shopping street is really an eye-catcher. In the distance you can see the mountains, otherwise it is a tree-lined avenue. Restaurants and cafes everywhere, side by side, a huge selection. That is really great. You can definitely also feel Bulgaria's communist Soviet past in the city's cultural center, which was built in this classic, rather Soviet brutalist style. And now, friends, I am taking a taxi in the most dangerous direction in the capital. They say you should not walk around there alone, and I am even going there almost at night. We will see what awaits us, or me. Let's see. In any case, there is already more police stationed here than in the city center. I have to say the first impression kind of confirms what you read online, because there is a certain smell of marijuana in the air here in the park. Yeah. But apart from that, this actually feels fairly normal, I have to say. You kind of have a bit of a melting pot of nationalities here, I would say. And then you have this gambling going on here. The men are gambling here somehow. Yeah. What do you guys play? Hello guys. You can join in for €5. I think it could be a scam. Maybe, so better get out of here quickly. But the architecture here is also really beautiful. You have something like a train station here, a beautiful mosque, as I said. Yeah, the park. I might keep my distance there at night, but otherwise, let's keep going, guys. A casino here, another casino somewhere back there. I honestly have to say I do not feel that unsafe right now. I am, of course, also a bit privileged as a 2-meter tall man and all that. But yeah, for me it is also not that different from other cities where I have lived. In Mannheim it is exactly the same. For example, I lived in Mannheim for 2 years. But I understand what people mean. A bit of gambling, casinos, people hanging around and gambling in the park and so on. Everything always has a slightly shady vibe to it. In this district, the Romani population is very strongly represented. And yes, in general, in Bulgaria, there are various neighborhoods where there are a lot of Romani people. And now I will tell you a bit about the history of the Romani people, then we might try to find someone to chat with.
Historians believe that the Romani people migrated from northern India to Europe about 1,000 years ago. Today, Romani people can be found all across Europe. But Bulgaria has the highest proportional share. About 10% of Bulgaria's population are Romani. Romani people often suffer from negative stereotypes and usually live somewhat isolated within cities.
My brother.
One for you, brother.
Thanks, brother. Hey.
Cheers. Do you speak English?
Okay, England, no.
Bulgarian.
Brandy, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Cheers. Yeah, when you walk around here, you definitely see many problems related to drugs and alcohol. And yeah, I wanted to talk a bit with the guy, ask 1 or 2 questions in English, but of course it is difficult to find someone who speaks good English. And of course there is also a lot of fake clothing being sold here. Alright friends, day 2 has begun. We are now heading deep into the heart of the country, right into the center so to speak, and first we have to go to the train station. Let's go. Welcome to Plovdiv, dear friends, and now you really feel that you have arrived in Eastern Europe. Shops inside the train station. Check out how old school this McDonald's looks. It has a red sign, and inside it looks like it is straight out of the 1990s. Do you see that? Pure old school. At first glance, I like Plovdiv much more than Sofia. No trash, no graffiti, super calm city. I would compare Sofia a bit to Berlin, and Plovdiv maybe to something like Augsburg or Munich, if you put it into a German comparison. And yeah, very nice here, guys, the German Consulate General. But it kind of looks like a normal residential building, a bit unspectacular. I think the other floors are actually residential apartments.
This is Hristo, a native Bulgarian from Plovdiv. He will accompany us today.
Now that we were at the German Consulate General, a question immediately came to my mind. We do have quite a few Bulgarians in Germany and in general. While preparing for this trip, I watched many videos by other YouTubers, and there were always these statistics showing that a lot of young people are leaving Bulgaria. So I wanted to ask you, is that really the case? And secondly, what are, so to speak, the reasons why many young people leave Bulgaria?
So that is correct, but also partly not correct. For example, I am a case of someone who left Bulgaria. Definitely. I went to Germany to study, but then I came back this year because I also see opportunities here.
I believe the country is developing.
And 2024 was the first year in over 20 years where more people came to Bulgaria than left the country. But statistically, we can say that at the end of the 1980s, there were over 10 million people in Bulgaria, and now there are just over 6 million. So you can imagine over 4 million have disappeared. The most important reason for this is that the economic situation worsened and people found more opportunities elsewhere. So now, especially with the European Union, it is very easy to emigrate. Germany also does a lot to attract Bulgarians, so that has to be said as well. Germany actively recruits here. Do you know what that is back there?
No.
That is something very important from the 2nd century. It is one of the best preserved amphitheaters from Roman times, and it is located right here in Plovdiv.
Oh, not bad. Crazy. Imagine studying here, guys. You have an amphitheater, basically, and this view over the city. A small cafe, that's amazing. I think this is one of the best campus views I have ever seen. Or campy, as you might say. Alright guys, now we have climbed up the hill, and here you really see pure Eastern Bloc vibes. It is a very beautiful city, but of course, the Eastern Bloc is still present here. Bulgaria was not part of the Soviet Union, but I have often read that Bulgaria was something like the unofficial 16th Soviet state. How do Bulgarians today feel about Russia, for example? Because back then they were extremely close to the Soviet Union, with Russia as its center. That is exactly why I am wondering what it is like nowadays.
You cannot give a clear answer. You cannot simply say people are positive or negative toward Russia. It depends on which generation you belong to. For example, the older generation that grew up during socialist times. They grew up with the idea of Russia because for them, the Soviet Union and Russia are almost the same concept. And for them, Russia was the big brother. You could always turn to the big brother. That was strength, the center of the world, the highest position you could reach. Going to Russia, working in the Soviet Union, that was the dream back then. But the generation that grew up after the transition now has access to Western Europe and the entire world. So I would say this is a generational issue. Generally, people who grew up during those times or shortly after tend to view Russia more positively. People of my generation, I would say, are more negative. And negative should not mean culturally, as in hating or rejecting Russian culture. It is more political. Young people tend to identify more with the European Union because they experienced its positive sides. Here, guys, you can see all the hills that are still here in Plovdiv at once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 2 small ones, right? Here are 4, and we are standing on the 5th.
Okay, we are standing on the 5th. And this right here is the best view in the city at sunset. And as you can see, there are quite a few people enjoying it as well. Here, guys, you can perfectly see the contrast between the old town, the center, and a more European look. And when you swing over here, it is pure Eastern Bloc feeling. As if there were a line right through the middle, basically the perfect city to get an overview of Bulgaria's history, you could say.
That is what I would say. This is the oldest city, not only in Bulgaria, but in all of Europe. Not many people know this, but it is the oldest continuously inhabited city in Europe. That means the city has never been completely abandoned since its founding. That is almost 8,000 years, making it the 4th oldest city in the world.
We briefly talked about culture, also about women. My question, because I lived in Russia for a longer time, is what is the mentality of women like in Bulgaria? Is it also traditional?
I would say traditional. If you go 50-50, you will not get a second date. Short answer, no.
At most in rare exceptions, but even those hardly exist.
I have never heard of it. There may be women who prefer that, and I would respect that. But traditionally for us it is like this. You invite someone for coffee, for food, or for a walk, whatever it may be. And then you pay for it. You pay for the drinks, the food, whatever it is. For us, it is not about whether the woman can afford it or not. It is more a question of respect. You show interest that way. You show that you are interested in the woman.
That does not surprise me, because so far there has not really been an Eastern Bloc country where it was different. In the East, it is just like that.
I know that in the West, this is sometimes interpreted as the man or the guy showing dominance or something like that. We do not perceive it that way here, and neither do the women. It is simply part of the culture. And I can tell you with almost 100% certainty, if you go on a date and say 50-50, even if the woman had a very nice time with you, it is very likely that you will never see her again. It is simply a no-go.
Okay. Here you can get 2 doner kebabs for €2.56, which means one doner costs €1.25. And that is exactly why Bulgaria is one of the cheapest countries in Europe. You would not find prices like this anywhere, I would say, no matter where in the world. €1.25 for a doner? Insane. Would you say Bulgaria is one of the cheapest countries in Europe in terms of purchasing power and so on?
I would say that, especially within the European Union, Bulgaria should be the cheapest country. Especially when it comes to eating out and things like that, but prices are also rising here. If you go to a supermarket, some products cost the same, or sometimes even more than in Germany, at least some products, occasionally. And you have to keep in mind that there is a big difference between incomes here and in Germany or other Western European countries. I have acquaintances who studied things like European studies or international relations, similar to me, and work at the Bulgarian Foreign Office. When they start, they earn roughly 650 or 700 euros per month. That is in an important institution, like a state ministry. In a company, a normal starting salary is around 1,000 euros. It can be less in big cities and sometimes more in smaller towns.
So that answers the question once again. You already hinted earlier at economic reasons why many young people leave Bulgaria. And yeah, that makes sense.
But I can say something positive. Income tax is 10% flat, exactly, for everyone, regardless of how much you earn. Dividends are also taxed at 10%. Everything is relatively low. That is also something to consider. When you compare gross and net income, it is calculated a bit differently.
Maybe I should move to Bulgaria. 10% taxes.
10% taxes, yes.
And donor prices of €1.
So guys,
Maybe the secret emigration tip, who knows?
everyone is very welcome.
The next 24 hours here in Bulgaria have begun, and today we are heading up to a kind of Russian monument, an Alyosha, which also exists in a similar form in Russia. And we did not want to withhold that from you. But yeah, extremely foggy today, but still very beautiful. We are walking through many artist districts, lots of different graffiti, you have to say. Because Plovdiv was a European capital of culture, there is also an extreme amount of art on the streets here. If you climb up here, guys, you normally get a beautiful view, as you can see. Yeah, no, just kidding. Today we are unlucky. Only about 1 meter of visibility. This is our view. Glory to the invincible Soviet Liberating Army, the star, and then a representative Russian soldier, just like the one standing in Murmansk. So historically, Bulgaria and Russia are indeed closely connected, and Bulgaria was, so to speak, the unofficial 16th country of the Soviet Union. Pure history up here, guys.
So for us, these Soviet monuments are a bit controversial. In Sofia, the monument to the Soviet army has already been removed, and here it is still controversial. You see the red color, which symbolizes blood. Because the Soviet army and the relationship with the Soviet Union were by no means positive. You cannot say that at all. And the thing is that part of society advocates for completely removing such monuments. Because they symbolize Soviet rule, even if it was not 100% official, they had the greatest influence on Bulgaria at that time. Others say this is part of history and must remain. I have to say, for the people of Plovdiv, especially my generation who have nothing to do with the Soviet Union, this monument is simply part of the city. On this very hill, for example, we always gather after finishing school for our graduation celebrations. Watching the sunset is very, very beautiful. And I see this as part of history, not as something that portrays the Soviet Union as something super positive.
But yeah, it depends. So you would not tear it down?
Simply erasing history does not work, not in Germany and not in Bulgaria either.
There was also a similar debate in Warsaw, Poland. The cultural center that Stalin gifted to the Poles is highly controversial. Many people say blah blah, but I have to say it is such a landmark, such an eye-catcher in Warsaw, that it would actually be a shame to remove something like that. But everyone has their own opinion.
That is why we live in a democracy. Everyone can say what they believe, and that is how it should be. 30 years ago, that was not the case.
Yes, absolutely.
Bulgaria, a country of contrasts. I spent around 100 hours here in total and experienced a country full of contrasts. Few countries carry so much history within them. Romans, Ottomans, Soviets. They came, ruled and collapsed, but Bulgaria remained. Today, you can find beautiful landscapes, historic cities, and an impressive culture here, but also the harsh reality of ghetto-like districts, which you will learn more about in the coming weeks. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next adventure.